Hey everyone, this is Rufus. Welcome again to another episode of Unstoppable REI, and I'm here with Anna Lee. Now, I should have asked to make sure that I pronounced that correctly. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, good. All
You
right.
got it right.
All right, perfect. So, all right, before we get started, I got a ton of questions for you. I need to know about Tony Robbins. So, last time we talked, you were heading to Tony Robbins. I want to know all about it. So, tell me, how was it?
It was amazing. I
Was
went
it?
to a business mastery event.
Okay.
It was in person. It was kind of hybrid for some people that join online, but I got to be in person because of my friend, and
Yeah.
so much value. I cannot even I don't even know where to start with. It's just
Wow.
connections, information,
Yeah.
mindset, everything.
So, how many people were there? Was it a small group?
I think in person it was only about 400 or 500,
Okay, that's
but
relatively small for
online.
him. Yeah, for his
No,
group.
no, no, because online it's several thousand
Oh,
people.
got it. Okay, so
Yeah,
I see. So it's hybrid. I see what you're saying. Cool.
yeah,
And I'm a huge Tony Robbins fan. Oh my
me
gosh.
too.
So when we talked, you said you're gonna go, and I was like, oh my gosh, I couldn't wait to find out what happened. So good. So so how long ago was it? About a month ago, or?
About 3 weeks ago.
Okay, so
Yeah,
not that long. Okay, cool.
yeah.
So have you implemented any stuff yet? Have you seen any results yet? I mean, what do you tell me? What about that? What's going on with that?
Yeah, for sure. That he had some guests over too. And I just about launched the website. So
Okay,
the timeliness of one of the guests was amazing. Um, they were talking about, integrating as many videos as possible, and they were kind of talking about like leaky faucet or kind of just leak in your pipeline.
hmm.
And what they were talking about essentially is that when it becomes confusing for your client, what are you actually offering, or like
Ah,
the details of your service,
yeah.
then you have a leaky faucet, right?
Okay,
So for anything that's leaking along the way, because you may have a service that kind of starts here and ends there,
yeah.
he's like, plug in the video here. If it's not clear, plug in the video there. So that's what I'm working on right now. My
Okay,
website has been launched, but I'm integrating a lot of the tips and tricks from the marketing content that we had.
sure. Got it. Got it.
Um,
Kind of fixing the leaks.
exactly. Yeah. But
Nice. I
there's
like it.
there's so much more. I mean,
Yeah.
I outlined so many things to start working
Well,
on. You only
sure.
have so much
Yeah.
time, right? So I started
Well,
with
sure.
one,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Go ahead.
then yeah.
I mean, I hit you off guard too. I didn't say, "Hey, let's talk about Tony Robbins." So I mean, so it's no
No, no
problem.
worries.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because well, I mean, you're not gonna ever get rid of me, especially after the screw up the last time I was trying to get you on and I messed it all up. So you're not gonna ever get rid of me now. So
No problem.
all right. So all right. Well, then let's talk about you. I mean, let's talk about give me your 30-second elevator pitch. I mean, your story. Tell me how it started.
Sure. So I was born and raised in a different country. I was born and raised in Uzbekistan.
Okay.
And back in 2005, my husband and I immigrated to United States.
Okay.
Your typical immigrant American story, American dream. Came here with nothing. I think we had $3,000 that we borrowed. That was
Wow.
basically all we had.
Okay.
And started kind of from bottom up, right? Worked a couple of just jobs just to get by and pay some bills, right? Like
Yeah.
I had a degree, he had a degree, we had some good jobs where we were, but we were humble. We knew that we have to start from the bottom. So I started from the shoe store, he started from the warehouse, but within about 12 to 18 months, we quickly kind of got into a corporate setting
Okay.
and kind of grew in that corporate setting to the senior director of strategy in one of the pharmaceutical distribution companies.
Okay.
And this March into 2022, I actually retired from my corporate job.
Nice,
So
nice. That's
yeah.
fantastic. So here's what I want to know. Okay, so and you mentioned, the typical coming from another country, the American dream, and all that stuff. So first of all, I guess I want to know: do people still think of it as an American dream? I mean, is it like coming? I want to come to America and make it. I mean, what is there some reality to that, or is that stereotype?
There is. I feel like nowadays a lot of people sort of like, there was a lot of division in the last few years for a
Okay,
lot of sort of pockets of, population in America. But I cherish my American citizenship, right? Like I
really?
cried when I got it, and it truly is. It's the land of the opportunity. It truly gave us that
Okay,
opportunity. So for us, the immigrants
Yeah.
and all of people, immigrants that we know, it's the
Yeah.
same thing. We value just holding the American passport or being able
Really?
to be a legal resident here. That's a big deal.
And that's so crazy because, but I think that you always, well, I heard it this way that the quickest way to appreciation is loss. So, like, if somebody took my American citizenship away, I probably would then like, oh my gosh, appreciate it more. But you coming in from another country, I mean, that's great. But I'm like, and I think that there's probably so many Americans that we just take it for granted. I mean, we don't, you know what I mean? You don't do anything with it. So it's like then someone comes from a foreign country, like you said, in 12 months, 18 months. I mean, that's
Yeah.
crazy. So so I need to read your notes. I need to read your your memoirs. I love
Hey,
that.
there's no blame. Even my kids don't take it for granted. They're
Yeah,
Americans, they're
yeah,
born here, so there's
sure.
definitely less appreciation even for
Okay.
them than it is for us.
So how long have you been in real estate?
We started probably right around 2016 with my
Okay.
husband, so
Yeah.
I was kind of always his side gig.
Okay.
He started with a flip, just wanted to learn.
Okay.
And as we were kind of talking about risk and reward, we didn't have enough money to even get started, right? So I had to be creative with some credit cards and whatever. And as
Okay.
we had the conversation about the risk, we said, you know what? You're gonna go in and basically pay for the education. The best education is actually to do it yourself. So
Gotcha.
even if we lose, like it's a physical asset, it's really
Yeah.
hard to lose everything. So
Yeah.
even if you lose money on that, let's say like $20,000, right? We were
Yeah.
not gonna go after the big project. That is your sort of tuition for that education, right? So
Gotcha.
his first flip, he made like $15,000.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you learn and you got paid,
Got
right?
paid to
So
learn. Sure. Wait.
exactly,
Yeah. Yeah. You can't ask for more than that. That's fantastic, right?
right.
Yeah. So what do you wish you would have learned or wish you would have known when you got started with this?
Uh, that probably growing fast is okay.
Okay.
I think both my husband and I kind of a little bit more of a risk aversion side.
Okay.
And knowing what we know now, it's definitely all doable. It's almost like once you have a project, you'll figure it out.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. So it sounds like you and your husband are both like go getters, like jump out of the plane and then grab the parachute after that kind of a thing.
You know what? I think it's almost like the opposite. We analyze, especially me. I have a lot of like analysis paralysis. I'm very
Oh, do you?
analytical mind.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, but from the other hand, I'm also very much open-minded. I surround
Okay.
myself with people that succeeded in
Gotcha.
something, and I believe in that, right? So I
Okay.
say if somebody else had it done, succeeded in something, then it
Yeah.
should work for us. So
Got it. I'll say so, but you might be a
both,
little bit more cautious. I guess moving
exactly.
away from the paralysis of the analysis, and you get more into the action
Exactly.
taking.
I'm learning.
Okay.
I'm recovering.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's
Analysis
cool.
paralysis.
Yeah. 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 I'm with you. I'm with you. So tell me, what has been maybe your biggest failure, and what did you learn from that?
Oh boy, that's a good question. Um, I think my biggest failure is probably like getting too much in my head, right? Like
Okay.
sometimes and I feel like it's more, it applies to life in general,
Yeah.
right? When we doubt ourselves, when we
Sure.
think that, oh, like people think this way or whatever,
Yeah.
and realizing actually nobody cares. Like the way that we perceive that people think of us,
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
nobody really cares that much. Because how often do you actually think about your neighbor or whatever? Just
Yeah. Right.
really, it doesn't matter, right? So I think, I generally try to appeal and be kind to people, but I think it comes with like a price that I pay myself. It's more of a my thing that
Yeah.
like, well, did I say it the right way? Was it a nice thing to do? So I feel like removing myself sometimes from like overthinking,
Okay.
being analytical, right? Thinking too much about like what other people think, but not even in regards to what do they think of me,
Yeah.
in terms of like what I'm portraying to the outer world, but more around what do they think of me, how I treated them, right? So I'm
Okay.
always kind of like, I used to be overthinking about it, but again, I'm on my path to
Yeah.
just letting that go and just
Sure.
kind of like, go forward with, um, as long as I have the great intent in mind, which is I always have, right? then, you have to kind of let go of a few things. Now, I'll give you one example of
Yeah,
like
sure,
what
please.
exactly just happened to me.
Yeah.
As I went to Tony Robbins,
Yeah.
Business Mastery, I'm talking to someone and I'm talking about my price point for my new business.
Okay.
And people are saying like, how much you ask for it? And like, I name my price and they're like, really? That little? I'm paying like way more. And I'm like, that's a reflection of my self-worth, right? Like what I'm thinking about, how much I'm charging. And after Tony Robbins, I came back and I'm like, you know what? I'm doubling my price and I feel confident and I just raised the prices. And the same day I got like a test in my life that happened with two people. So one client came over and said, I want you to hire a virtual assistant for me. And I kind of had the session with them.
Yeah.
And I said, and my price is X. That was the first time I kind of said it out loud.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, sure. Like, fine.
Wow.
And I'm like, really? That was easy.
Nice.
And another test that I had, another client said, I have a group of real estate agents and they would want to have that service too. And then how much is the price? And I named the same price.
Yeah.
He gets back to me in a text message and says, nobody will ever pay for that. Because like you can have access for this and this and that. And I kind of like, I took a step back and I'm like, oh my gosh, is this like, did I make a wrong decision? Right. So like I started doubting myself, but then I realized who he was thinking about is not my ideal client. I have a different ideal audience for me, right? It's people who are working, who don't want to work in their business, who want to be out like working on their business, right? Like it's people who want to stop doing the operations and actually have the business ownership mindset. Right. So, and I used to be in the operations and it's okay. So I was able to respond to that person with like actually not being stressed out about what did I say? What did I do?
Sure.
I was like, you know what? It's okay because not everyone can afford me. Right. And I finally kind of got it back to my core self.
Nice. Yeah.
I know the value that I provide.
Yeah.
And I was fine that I'm not for everyone. So that kind of like failure in the beginning that I had to always doubt myself.
Sure.
And now I'm getting back to kind of like being my core self and believing in myself. I think that's probably the biggest learning point for me.
Sure. I love that though, Anna. You know, interesting. I'll just say this because I'm not going to say very much about myself. This is all about you today. There's a really good book. Book actually changed my life back in 1990. I might have mentioned it to you last time we talked, but it's called Influence by Robert Cialdini. And and one of the things it's all about how people make buying decisions and how to motivate them to make the decisions that you want them to make. All right. So it's like influence, persuasion. And he calls these psychological shortcuts, things that people use to make buying decisions. And one of them is expensive equals good. So in other words, looking at this suit, actually, perfect example. You got 3 attorneys, you're getting sued. And one attorney charges $99, all the law you can handle, someone else charges $250 an hour. Third person charges $2,500 an hour. All right. Just from the pricing alone, it's like you determine who is the best, who's the, you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's almost like, and somebody else, another person, I don't know if you've studied anything about this guy. His name is Dan Kennedy, Magnetic Marketing. It's another good book. But anyway, he talks about the fact that there's no competitive advantage to being the lowest price in town, but there is to being the highest price. Yeah. And even Tony Robbins, last example, early in his career, he was doing good work for people, but people weren't, following through. Then he started charging $1 million for his face-to-face consultations. And you know what? That changed the success rate. Yeah. So you might even not be charging enough. It's like, hey, wait a minute, I might need to double or triple. So anyway, so good for you for valuing yourself, because that's the toughest time we have is valuing ourselves. I mean, it's like we could value somebody else, but just ourselves, so good for you. So what maybe have been your best resources along the way? By the way, can you share what business? Would you mind sharing? Would you be open to sharing?
Sure. Yeah. I just launched the company that basically helps business operators become business owners. So that's my thing from Tony, because he asks you, what business are you in? And then he says, what business are you really in? Right. So before I was saying, hey, I provide virtual assistant services, right?
Got
And
it.
then he's like, what business are you really in? So I'm
Yeah,
I'm in the business of helping business operators become business owners,
I
right?
love
Because we
that.
all want to free up that time. We want to stop
Sure.
the minutia
Yeah.
and be our own bottleneck. We want to kind of remove ourselves from that and kind of outsource that. So that's my business. My website is outsource your tasks. So yeah, I provide either the course. I want to teach the people basically
Okay.
how to hire VAs on their own, or if they're like ready kind of to up their game, they don't have time, I
Okay.
provide sourcing for them. I
Yeah.
basically like recruit 100 people. My team in Philippines basically interviews 25 candidates, and then the end result, they present you with 2 or 3, best qualified candidates for the role that you're looking for, with their disc profile and
Okay.
resume and pre-recorded interview.
I love
So
that.
that's essentially in a nutshell what I'm doing right now.
Okay. And there's a huge difference between an business operator and a business owner. I mean, let's just, I mean, let's be real. It's a
I
huge
know.
difference. So, so anyway, so back to real estate investing here for a second. What advice would you give to somebody to say, hey, you guys, 12 months you did this, and you guys, you retired and all this stuff. What advice would you give to somebody that's starting out, that wants to start out as a real estate investor?
First advice is
Yeah.
just start as soon as possible. I
Okay.
think I think for myself, just that whole analysis paralysis,
Sure.
you learn the most by doing.
Yeah, that's true.
So maybe start little, but start. I
Okay.
think that's the biggest kind of like mistake that everyone is making, including myself, is like
Sure.
not starting to find the right moment. Is the market going up or is the market going down, right?
Right.
There's
Right.
always going to be deals to be made in every market, but the best way to learn is just to start.
Just to get
So
going.
I recommend to start in any market, but maybe again, start smaller and then learn and kind of increase your appetite later.
Sure. But just do something. Get going. Good.
Exactly.
That's great advice. What have been your best resources? Maybe your best top 2, 3 resources along the way.
Sure. I would say people, just in general,
Okay.
right? People, surround yourself with people that do better, know more, go higher, right?
Okay.
I saw some amazing people right now at Business Mastery, just like several
Sure.
levels above me.
Okay.
And I'm in awe, and everyone is willing to share and communicate and, provide an advice. So I think people in general are the best source for
Okay.
life, right? Whether it's your even family members,
Okay.
sometimes you get like, I got so much wisdom from my grandparents. And it's like the subtle little things that they would say,
Okay.
and I'll be like, you know what? Okay. And it's just kind of pocketed somewhere in my brain.
Yeah.
And then I use that in the life. But yeah, overall kind of masterminds, again, people resources,
Okay.
all these conferences, even podcasts. Again, we're
Sure.
on podcasts right now. I
Yeah. Yeah.
listen to so many hours of podcast audiobooks, but it's like people sharing knowledge,
Okay.
right? So I kind of deem that who helped me the most is just people,
Just
right?
people.
Like people along the way.
Yeah. Can you share? Can you think of some advice that your grandparents gave you that you'd be open to sharing with us?
I think with their lifestyle, I think it was a lot of kind of grit and
Okay.
determination. My grandparents were the first among, maybe they had like 7 to 15 siblings, depending on which side of the family,
Mm.
but they were the first to get the college education.
Okay.
And not necessarily that I'm valuing as much college education nowadays,
Yeah.
but it's the grit and perseverance, right? It's when
Sure.
nobody else was thinking about it and they
Okay.
done it. My grandma was in love and she was dating this amazing guy that she thought was amazing guy, was ready to marry him. But back in the old days, he said, you know what, you have to pick, it's either college or me, right? Like, so
Mm.
having like learning those stories that she had to pick either to be sort of educated
Yeah.
or have like a love of her life. Yeah. And she had to part ways with him. So just kind of listening to the stories that they had to go through. They were the kids from World War II, lots of hunger, lots of perseverance. Um, I always have their sort of like mental picture to say, even if my lowest low, I'm
Yeah.
like, I've never had it as low as they had.
Sure.
So it's always just kind of good, sort of like a kicker and a pusher, for me to just go forward.
Sure. Good. I like that. So, What about mentors, people that have influenced you? Who are the maybe top, I don't know, two, three people that have influenced you the most?
Sure. I would say probably like besides my grandparents, my
Yeah.
dad was the highest influence.
Okay.
Early on, he was, inspiring with different ideas of
Mm.
entrepreneurship.
Okay.
Again, we grew up in Uzbekistan, so the first maybe 7, 8 years of my life, it was still Soviet Union.
Mm.
So we were kind of like untangling that like
Mm.
social environment where business was not even a thing.
Okay.
And as he was learning, getting into business, I was maybe, 10, 12, whatever, he would always kind of inspire me and what if you think this way? What if you're gonna do this way? So I always kind of listened to that. And he early on, I think I was in seventh grade, he he was able to explain to me how to set up a company with stock. So he wanted me to basically see if I wanted to bring in a couple of my classmates and start like a selling soda at school. It's
Wow.
like, but I'm not going to give you money because I want you to find money. So how about you actually go out, and he explained the equity whole concept in the stock, right? So like
Yeah.
raise the money.
Okay.
So you buy
Nice.
the first case of soda and then you can sell it. And even though it never kind of, I never was, probably at the time not ready, I guess. I
Okay.
didn't start it, but I already knew how the whole kind of equity and stock works in the country that barely knew how to just structure business, right? So he was my huge influence to just even think certain way. He was
Okay.
my uh, person who gave me Rich Dad Poor Dad book, right?
Mm.
And
Okay.
always kind of persuade me towards that direction. But along the way, I mean, there are different influences too. My husband is my rock, right? Like he's my base, right? So I can always rely on him. My whole family is just absolutely amazing.
Okay.
And we have a lot of friends that we came together with us. And, I can definitely say my best friend is just an absolute amazing influence on me as well.
Okay.
And masterminding and
Yeah.
having people in your area and you're kind of in your pocket that you can
Sure.
always, tap into is absolutely priceless.
Sure. Do you have any siblings?
I do. My sister, I have
Okay.
younger sister,
Just
not
one?
in the business at all. She's
Oh,
totally
really?
complete opposite of me.
Really? Okay, I just got one
Yes.
brother too. Interesting. So if you were on this side of the computer here asking the questions, I mean, what would you ask that I'm not asking? I mean, is there something that you would like people to know that I'm not asking you about?
That's a good question. um I guess I would have probably asked what inspires you, what's
Okay.
your why,
Okay.
right?
Good. That's a good
And
question.
I think it's a very kind of like trendy question right now.
Yeah.
But you know what? I feel like we should always ask this question continuously because I feel like the why changes over time,
Okay.
right? So if you've heard of Maslow's pyramid, right?
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
ask my why, as we immigrated to this country,
Okay.
I I basically just needed to have enough money to cover the bills, like shelter and food, right?
Okay.
My why back then was so different than it is right now, right?
Okay.
And I think it's okay to change it over time.
Sure.
But it's almost like having that stretch that
Okay.
pushes you to your why forward, right? So
Sure.
I'd say like right now it would be probably getting to like a full financial independence. Like I don't know if some people use like Fed Fi, right? Or whatever, right? So
Yeah.
I want to
Yeah.
be, I want to be there so that I never have to even think about the minutia of like what the next day will bring, right?
Okay.
Uh, and then I already have lined up my next thing. And it basically, if people ask you a question, what would you do if money is not an aspect at all?
Okay.
Right? Like you
Yeah.
don't have to worry about it. You have a trust fund, whatever it is, right? What would you do? And I already have that next idea lined up for myself. And I think going to Tony was super helpful because there was an exercise to voicing out your dreams. Because
Okay.
you go business, 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 you like learn accounting, marketing, this, and that. And then like one day he asked you, okay, now you've learned a lot of that. You're going to make a ton of money, but what are you going to do with that? Like, what's
Mm.
the ultimate thing, right? So what's your short-term dream, midterm dream, and long-term? And I kind of said it out loud. I was actually picked by Tony. That was
Oh,
like
really?
one of the fan moments. I was like,
Wow. Okay.
I talked
Nice.
to him. He was asking me questions, and I voiced out something that was a dream of mine for the long-term dream, which is kind of creating this holistic medicine portal. because I'm a patient, for my dad who is now battling cancer, for
Mm,
my son who had some health issues before.
okay.
So I'm a patient, and I'm trying to find ways to, identify the root cause of the health issue instead of just taking a pill every day, right? So I'm so passionate about this, and I wanted to say it out loud to keep myself accountable, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I was like, well, in the future, once I'm gonna get there. But the funniest thing is I voiced it out, and so many people reached out afterwards, and they said, how can we help you?
Wow.
Let's like, do something together, right? So it's very important for everyone to voice out their dreams and always kind of talk about them with themselves, with other people, because I feel like once you voice it out, and
Yeah.
you just say it out loud, like even going out like outside and just say it out loud, this is what I want.
Yeah.
I feel like it's very important to get them, right? Because
Yeah.
that's the end goal, right? We're not in it for money.
Yeah.
Money is more of a freedom thing, right? But once you have your freedom, what do you do? So
That's an
that's
excellent
that's what I would
question.
ask.
That's an excellent question. And it's how cool is it that you were picked by Tony?
Oh yeah, I had such a fan moment. That was
That
amazing.
was great. So were you a little starstruck? I mean, when you,
I totally was. And plus, because it was such a small setting, normally
yeah,
at these large events, like I
yeah,
used to be so far away, was
okay,
never close enough.
yeah,
But I was sitting very close, and he was just like in my line side. And when he asked like who wants to share, I was like, "Mm." And then he picked me like, and how about
nice.
you? And
That's really good. That's really
yeah,
cool. Wow, what a memorable time. So before I ask the last question here, Anna, how can people reach out to you, connect with you online? I mean, what's the best way to reach you?
sure. You can reach out to me, questions at outsourceyourtasks.com,
Okay,
or just check out my website, outsourceyourtasks.com. If you ever need kind of services related to virtual assistant, I'm ready to just hop on a call and just chat with anyone. So
okay,
I think through my website you can find my Calendly link and
okay.
always connect with me.
Cool, but you better have some money, right? You ain't coming. Yeah, you don't come cheap. Okay, we get that straight.
That's right.
I love it.
I'm ready to chat on the phone
Yeah,
and answer all the questions though. So
yeah,
don't you
sure.
worry about that.
All right, sounds good. I like that. All right, so last question. So obviously the name of my, well, not necessarily obviously, but the name of my podcast is, Unstoppable REI. The reason why I call it that is because, if you Google the term real estate investor failure rate, and I think maybe we talked about this, you'll see that 95% of real estate investors fail. Okay, sometimes people think that I'm just making that number up, but if you Google that, you'll see it. It's crazy. So and so my goal is to talk to super successful real estate investors because I want to find out what did you do to succeed in an industry that's so, that has such a high failure rate. So I have a two-part question for you. One, how would you define the word unstoppable? And then what are you doing specifically to make yourself unstoppable? Now you mentioned a few of those things, but yeah, specific, what are you doing to make yourself unstoppable?
Sure. I mean, I think it's in the word, right?
Yeah.
You just pick up the next day, right? No matter
Yeah.
what failures you have, the next day you just pick up and just start over, right? Sometimes you don't even have the failure. If you kind of have been in the real estate market from 2009 up
Yeah.
until recently, you probably never even failed if you were in real estate because the market was just very good.
Yeah.
So it's no matter where you are, it's just kind of, you know, there's a definition of entrepreneur. They can fail 30 different startups. And then the next day they just get up, what's next? Right. So
Yeah.
they never even have that feeling of, oh my gosh, I'm a failure. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So being unstoppable, I think, is not looking at your failures as a failure, but
Yeah.
as a learning, right? And like
Sure.
you have one more step to go forward, one more step to go forward, right? So that's the definition for me. And what I do for myself, I mean, I have those days when it's just
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, like what am I gonna do with that? And I'm like, when is this next thing coming from or whatever? Or some situations that I was kind of placed myself in. And in the end of the day, taking a step back, talk to someone. People
Yeah.
are your best
Right.
resources.
Like you said,
Sometimes
sure.
you just need one person to just kind of like get you out of that mindset.
Sure.
So and then keep going.
Yeah, I love that. Just take one more step. You mentioned your husband being your rock. My wife is my rock. She's my reason why. And one of them I've got, and like you said, there are they change over time, but she's been that reason for a long time. We had this agreement. when we got married. We've been married 32 years now. This is our 32nd year.
Congrats.
Thank
That's
you.
a long time.
But I married, I married up, and if you saw her, you'd be like, how did you get her? But anyway, that's for another podcast episode. But anyway, we had this agreement that I would make the living, and she would make the living worthwhile. That was our agreement.
That's awesome.
And you know what? She's done a phenomenal job with that. But I haven't always. I've failed sometime in my end. You know what I mean? And I'm grateful that in spite of my failures, I'm young enough to to learn, and you grow, and you, like I said, surround yourself with great people. And but yeah, but she's been my reason why. She's also my mentor, my coach. She's all of that. So but anyway, so now I'm got way off base here. But listen, I appreciate your time. I don't want this to be our last time connecting. Hopefully we can connect
Sure.
again. Cool. All right. I want to do whatever I can to get you some high paying clients. I want you, people, and then you met with Tony. I mean, how cool is that? How
I know.
cool
I
is that?
still have the ribbon.
Did
Like
you really?
I didn't even take it off. I'm like, it's so funny. Like my husband's like, how long are you gonna wear it? I'm like, probably until
Forever.
it
Yeah.
falls off.
Yes, I love that. But you know what? I really like hanging out with you. Sometimes when I talk with a lot of people, sometimes you meet a person, just you're like, whatever. But I feel like there's something there. I feel like we had a little bit of a connection, and I would love to find out what else we could do to add value to each other's business. So if you're open to
Sure.
that, I would love to do that. So, but anyway,
Of
but
course.
thanks for your time today, and
Thank you.
yeah, we'll
My
talk again.
pleasure.
We'll talk again real soon. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.